Hey everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to episode number 69 of the Rambler Podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence, and today we're thrilled to have Bill Flanagan on as a guest. Bill graduated from Cathedral Prep in 1987, and he is in his 25th year as the Vice President of Athletics at Cathedral Prep. He also held the same title at Villa Maria Academy from 2009 to 2022, leading into the merger. The boys and girls teams have won more than 300 state, district, metro, and region championships during his tenure. Bill is a certified athletic administrator responsible for the school's interscholastic athletic programs, which consists of 27 varsity sports. This includes a leadership role in selecting and evaluating all coaches, as well as the organization and scheduling of all athletic events, which continues at a national level. Cool stat here, more than 70% of the school's student body at Cathedral Prep competes in athletics program, with a sizable number participating in more than one sport. He is also the tournament director of the Burger King Classic, which is going to be going on the week this episode of the podcast is coming out, which is the top 4 team high school basketball tournament in the country, and is the director of the Cathedral Prep Athletic Hall of Fame. As a side note, that's also part of what he manages here. Bill is in his 14th year serving on the District 10 committee as one of 19 members in Western Pennsylvania appointed to his group. He is the D10 secretary, represents the city of Erie, and is also the tournament director for lacrosse. Previously, he served as president, vice president, and treasurer of the District 10 Athletic Directors Association. He is a 1991 graduate of St. Bonaventure University, and he previously spent more than a dozen years in the broadcast field in both television and radio. His career began at ESPN as a production assistant. He served as a sports anchor and reporter in Albany, Georgia, and locally for WSEE-TV. He handled television, play-by-play duties for the Image Sports Network, and on radio at WFNN AM 1330, where he also hosted a sports call-in show. Bill and his wife Stephanie reside in Erie. Their son Brendan, prep class of 2016, works in Cleveland, while their daughter Catherine, Villa Maria Academy, class of 2019, and graduated from nursing from Villanova. And all that to say, Bill, we're thrilled to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
I appreciate that, Jimmy. Thanks for the opportunity today.
Yeah, this is fun to have you on. You were the AD when I was a student here. You were the AD when my dad was a coach here. So I've kind of known you for a long time now, and also previously reported to you in my other position at the school. The list goes on and on.
We have a long-lasting relationship, and it's always been a good one. I always enjoyed working with you and spending time with you, and looking forward to the discussion today.
Yeah, it's fun. When I started the podcast 2 years ago, the idea was to connect alumni to what's going on at Prep, and to have alumni come on, and what a fitting spot for you with 25 years now working in the school. Probably feels like, I don't know, does it feel like yesterday you just started, or does it feel like a lifetime ago?
I was going to say it feels like 125, but no, it goes by quickly, and when you're surrounded by great people, makes the time go by, and obviously it's been a blessing to be here as long as I have. And
the years, obviously, they go quick, but it's even quicker when, what I realized working at the event center, especially with what you do, it's so seasonal. You go from fall sports, then you transition to winter sports, then spring sports, and you get this little gap in the summer before now fall workouts are starting already in August. So it's funny how quickly it's turning over for you within the year.
You get into that pattern, but no 2 days in a row are the same. I mean, you can sit there and say, wow, 14 years ago we played on this date and did this. They're all different. The experiences are different. Obviously, the student athletes are different. So I think that's what keeps it interesting. You really enjoy being around those kind of people and that age group. And they're inquisitive, they're energetic, and it certainly keeps you hopping. And I would like to think keeps you a little bit young.
Right. So I think a great place to kind of start, this conversation would be even going back to the beginning, back before you're the AD, you're at Bonaventure. Even thinking about you and your decision on why you wanted to come to Cathedral Prep. Can you share with us what that process was like when you were 13, 14 years old?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question, Jimmy. My dad is a 1961 graduate, and the times and the demographics of our city have changed. I mean, when I started as a student here in 1983, our freshman class number, I believe, was 279.
Wow.
There were well over 1,000 kids in the building, all boys at that time. And I'd like to think it's still a privilege, the opportunity to attend school here. Back then, there were more high schools in this area. It was certainly more competitive because of, again, the population of Erie and the amount of schools. And, just when I was accepted, it was a great feeling. I knew right away. I mean, you kind of grow up with it, having somebody that was an alum. But my grandfather had gone to Tech, and when my dad was here as a student, Tech Memorial was right across the street. So where the MTA parking lot is, that's where Tech was.
Yeah,
so you imagine you have two schools, well over combined 2,000 students, and they're kitty corner away from each other.
Wow.
That sets up a pretty neat rivalry. Now, by the time I was old enough to go to high school, Tech was relocated to where Erie High School is right now. But no, it was one of those things. I went to school actually across the street at St. Pete's, and it was just always a dream, and just kind of segued over to prep. It was a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, that's pretty neat that your dad was here, then you got to carry on the legacy. Now your son and daughter have gone to prep and Villa. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
When you were a student here, I mean, what were some of the things that really, stand out to you? You talk about it being a privilege, and you love the fact that you were able to go to prep. What were some of the things that did make that experience for you so special during your years as a student here?
I think the number one thing that resonated then, that is still a factor here today, is competition. I always found it that you're competing in the classroom. You're competing in any kind of extracurricular. It could be in a play or musical performance, athletically. I'd like to think that still resonates as much today as it did 40 plus years ago. I think that's where so many prep alum get that feeling of pride, but also a work desire. And when we merged with Villa Maria Academy, I found that to be the same type of ethic that was very prevalent in that school too. So the segue of the two has been, to me, seamless, but that was the number one thing that stuck with me, that everything was a competition in a good, healthy way. Yeah, there were occasions when, the rules might get bent or things would go a little bit sideways, but I just found that once you got to college, you were with, again, like people who would sit there maybe and struggle in a class or an experience. You'd be like, wow, I had this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We went through it already. That was the experience, I think, that was impressed upon me the most.
Yeah. I always call it, that camaraderie, the everyday brotherhood, but when you talk about it from that lens, like the competition standpoint, that's the part that I did love the most too. I mean, dumb gym class games that you're playing, you take as if it's the Super Bowl, right? And then
they were absolutely the Super Bowl.
They were absolutely the Super Bowl. Getting down to the lunchroom when it was under the church, in the classroom, competing academically to be better than your classmates. I mean, it's a healthy, competition, but definitely one that it made us all better because of it.
Yeah, and everybody will tell you the story, and I grow tired of it, and I know that the current day students do as well, so I try to minimize it. Back when I was a student, the old you walked, walked to school 10 miles, uphill both ways type of thing. But back when I was a student, no one bought their lunch. It was just a different atmosphere, and your lunch period, bell to bell, was 20 minutes. So if you're on the second floor of the science wing, you have to go, to the main building, up to the third floor as a freshman, get your lunch, then go back downstairs to the cafeteria. You're on borrowed time by the time you get down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're woofing down your food, and that's another thing I've always found is that when you're around some prep alums, I'm not in that category, and they finish their meal in about 2.5 minutes, it kind of dates back to when they were a student here.
I'm still typically the first one done with my meals.
There you have it.
I think part of it's the kids, I'm just trying to eat while they're appeased for a minute, and then the other part of it is, my lunch is at prep. I usually wolf down, as they say.
Speed race.
Are there certain teachers during your years that really stood out to you as impactful?
Yeah, the number one teacher, Jimmy, when I was here that made such an imprint on me was Mr. Tom Hansen. Just very straightforward, regimented, detailed, but really moved me as a student. I just thought what he brought to the table as an educator and as just an overseer was very positive. I tried to take a lot of the traits that he had as far as organization and attention to detail with me. But he certainly made a mark. So many of the priests and the nuns, because we had so many, were special when I was a student here, and always remember them fondly. And the experience. I don't know that I could have had a better experience than I had as a student here. Still have lifelong friends that communicate with literally daily.
Yeah.
See all the time. It was just a special experience that I'm so privileged to have had, really.
And it's awesome to hear that. And then fast forward a few years later, now you're the AD, of the school that you had such a great experience at. Did you ever envision yourself, coming back to work for the school in any capacity?
No, I did not. Very simply, when I was probably about 7 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And that probably wasn't the best thing because I boxed myself in, and I don't think, looking back at it, I was wise enough to have seen, not necessarily the pitfalls, but I certainly wasn't paying attention enough to how I could have branched out and done a few more things, especially, to prepare myself as a professional. But I wanted to be a sports broadcaster in some capacity, and I knew that at a very, very young age. And then I followed that. I went to the greatest collegiate institution in America, St. Bonaventure, and I had an absolutely wondrous experience there. It was fantastic, and was very fortunate, really because of the connections that I had and made there. Shortly after I graduated in 1991, to get a job at a very small company in the middle of nowhere that is not so small anymore. And, that experience taught me so many things that I carry with me today. But, to get to prep, having started there in 91 at ESPN, to land here 9 years later, there was no roadmap for that, for sure.
So how'd that happen?
It's a great question. I had heard a sports anchor years ago say that particular profession, you have to work it out of your system. You have to get it out of your system and move on. And that's basically where I had landed. My favorite rock group is Rush, and their lead singer, Geddy Lee, put it very poignantly. I saw in a documentary. He said, once you start introducing children into your life, your priorities and your vision changes. And at that time, in the late 90s, we had a son, and I just saw the path that I was on, and it just wasn't for me anymore. I'd worked it out of my system. Yeah. I had decided to make a change, and then just through dialoguing with different people and connections, this opportunity at Cathedral Prep presented itself. Tony Himes, who's a friend and had done a great job here as the AD, was also leaving the profession, this current profession that I'm in, to go back to being a practicing attorney, and that's how that had opened up, and they made the decision to hire me, and it's worked out very well for me in terms of how it's gone. I don't know if anyone on that committee regrets it, but it's that's basically the long and the short of how
that was the fall of '99.
It was early spring of 2000,
and
then I was hired in May of 2000.
Yeah. So you basically had your whole career with Father Jabo as well then, correct? Because he became the headmaster?
That's very accurate. I think technically speaking, Monsignor Allison, Bruce Allison, technically hired me because he was still in charge. Father was the assistant headmaster at the time. Two great people that I was blessed to work under and to be able to report to and communicate with. But that's exactly right. That's how the process started, and Father Jabo started his first year as the actual headmaster the same year that I had started.
Yeah.
I was starting.
Yeah, pretty neat. I mean, I look around the building now, and some of my classmates still ask me what teachers or who's still there that we had. Not many teachers at all anymore. There's a few. But you're one of the staples now. I mean, you're one of the legends, so to speak, in the building.
You can definitely eliminate legend. I've just been here a long time. I'm not in the Bob Achille class, and don't claim to be. For sure.
Not yet. Maybe Bob's on another category. Yeah. But one of the things that is so prevalent about Cathedral Prep is we are known for our athletics. It's been that way prior to you, and it's continued on because of your leadership now with the amount of success that our teams have been able to accomplish. And one of the things that I wanted to ask was, I kind of start the podcast out by saying Cathedral Prep, it's the podcast about highlighting the standard of excellence, why prep is the standard of excellence. And I have guests come on and talk about their time at Prepper Villa, and then they go on to talk about what they've done in their career and how Prepper Villa helped form them to be there. When it comes to specifically within your department of athletics, what would you say has been some of the keys to maintaining that high standard of excellence and expectations on the athletics program here at the school?
Well, I'll make one slight, if you want to call it correction or alteration. We've been incredibly successful here and very fortunate as a school, and I'll lump that in athletically for two reasons. One, we have very determined, high energy, willing to work student athletes. One, and two, we have incredibly dedicated coaches. That's the reason. I mean, it's somebody giving you the keys to the Porsche and telling you not to crash it. And there have been occasions when I have dinged it up, but that's the reason that we've had this success, is because of the student athletes and the coaches. There's just a piece here, I think, Jimmy, that I've always said that we're not better than anyone. We're just different. And I think the desire, going back to that competition level as a student, is still a key part here today. Yeah. I think there's just an expectation to give your best, to do the most you can, to help the person next to you. And there's been wonderful leadership by great men and women as coaches, and we just have determined student athletes who are willing to give of their time and maybe do a little bit more than they expected because they're pushed in that proper direction.
Yeah. I mean, I know specifically to what you're speaking of, I played baseball here, as you know, and there was definitely challenging times through my years at baseball where thought I was better than what I was, and really had to prove myself to my coaches that I was worthy of being on the team, making the team and playing, and it made me better as a person. And those experiences I had through baseball, I carry with me through my life, and it's something I carry with pride of the things I accomplished on the team, because I know what work ethic I put in to get there and what it took for me mentally to overcome some of those obstacles or challenges that I had. So when you talk about, it's the student athletes, it's the coaches, you still have a big role in that, and specifically, involved in selecting those coaches, right? Making sure that it's a right fit for the organization. And that's one thing I've always been I don't want to say like in awe of what you do, but the hiring process of these coaches, I'm always impressed to meet, the types of coaches you've been able to bring in. So kind of going off of that, like what sort of qualities do you look for in a coach? Like when you're going through that process, what qualities do you look for in a coach, and how do they contribute for the student athletes' growth overall as you kind of envision them being the leader of these teams?
I think the first thing is you're hoping that they're really good communicators, that there's a connection with the student athlete. We're just in a age and a time, Jimmy, and you know this. I mean, you have a family, you have children. It is just different. And again, I don't say that 40 years ago was better or greater than it was 80 years ago or than it was 8 minutes ago. You have to have a connection with the current 14 to 18-year-old and how you're able to interact in their day, because their pressures and their worries and their stresses are completely different than yours were when you were a student here, and they sure as heck are completely different than mine were when I was a student here eons ago. And we don't always get it right. Sometimes the connection works just right. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it just doesn't work. It's never for a lack of trying, but it's just different coaching students today than it's ever been. And again, that doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different. It's their stresses and pressures. They're not even what I experienced. Not even in the same hemisphere as to what they're going through. They're dealing with this every day. Mental illness is absolutely a thing. Back when I was a student, or back when I was a teenager, it was, the old rub some dirt on it. It's the blue flu. You'll feel better tomorrow. We've obviously come a long way. We've learned about that. But what they go through is completely different, and you have to try to measure up to that, to measure, to figure out how you can assist. But that's the main thing, I think, is trying to have that connection. Yeah. And again, sometimes we can hit it out of the park, and sometimes it just doesn't work. We've hired people, certainly through a process, where I've left saying that coach is absolutely going to crush it for us, and it doesn't work at all. And then you end up with something you might not be so sure. Boy, I really hope it works, but I'm not betting the farm on it. Yeah. And you realize that person's here, for 20 plus, and has done just an incredible job. It's a lot of times it's a leap of faith, really. Yeah.
Well, and I was going to joke and say, well, off script here, is there, you don't have to get specific, a coach you've hired before that, mid-season of their first year, you're like, oh gosh, what did I do here? and I'm sure there's maybe been one through the years that's happened with. And obviously you count the wins more than the losses with the amount of hires. But and then the other component you were mentioning was the student athletes, and it's pretty neat. We were mentioning earlier that's more than 70% of the students here at the school participate in athletics, and a lot of them participating in multiple sports. A big part of the culture is fostering and the ability for kids to want to be involved in sports, in multiple sports. So how do you help encourage that among the student body to get them involved in athletics and doing multiple sports? How do you kind of send that message to the kids? And a lot of them obviously come here with their desires to play certain sports, but what role do you see you play with that with some of those students?
Again, it gets back to communication. You try to make these kids aware of just every and all opportunities. I think a lot of people come in with a vision that I can do A, B, and C, and when that doesn't work out, that doesn't mean you just surrender and say, well, I'm done participating in anything. Yeah. We still have some what I would call more infancy sports. Lacrosse would come to mind, and I say that not that it's a new sport in a generality standpoint. It's still relatively new to this area. And because the youth program in a sport like that has not been developed over 30, 40, 50 years, you find kids that have no idea what a lacrosse stick is, as an example, and they come in here and they have a great 3 or 4 year experience, having never even thought of playing. We just want people to be involved. When my son was in 8th grade, he asked, I could tell he was pensive and worried, and can I ask you something? And you're wondering, oh wow, where's this going? And he said to me, are you all right if I don't play a sport at prep? And And my first and only reaction was I would hope what it should have been, which was absolutely, I'm fine with that. You just have to be involved. And he did 1,000 things here at the school. He was the class president for 4 years. He was the football statistician, the basketball manager. He did all of Father Mike DeMartinez's plays, doing the audio-visual, and then got on stage for the last 2 performances of his career, which shocked the heck out of me.
Yeah.
But that was the main thing. Get involved.
Right.
And that's the number one thing I say at the freshman orientation every year. I don't care if you play a sport. I hope you do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, do something. Get involved with our school because there's a myriad of things to do. And I think that for the most part still occurs today.
I would say so, and just from my outside perspective right now with it, obviously we're talking athletics with the department you run here at the school, but yeah, there's so many different opportunities for the students here to get involved with something. If it's not athletics, there is an area of interest of them that we have available here for them, and the biggest message, and I'm glad that's what you give to the freshmen, is find that. Get involved, become involved, and do that with what you want to pursue. That's a cool story about Brendan, too. I didn't realize that. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure he was feeling coming up to ask you that.
And that's, I was trying to ease it while at the same time say, you're not getting a free pass. You have to come here and work and be involved. And he took that upon himself, which was no doing of mine, and just had a really, really solid experience and still has friends, obviously, from that time frame, but still has those connections and communicates with teachers and the proctors and the coaches that he was involved with, just on a different level.
Yeah. And do you mind sharing about Catherine? Was she involved in sports?
It's a great question. Yeah. No, she it's funny, when she was in 8th grade, I happened to ask her. She was definitely rooted more in, I need to compete in athletics. That's just who I am. That's how I'm wired, which is fine. And I said, well, what do you want to, what are you interested in participating in maybe as a freshman? And if memory serves, she said, well, I really want to play tennis, water polo, soccer, volleyball, and cross country. And I said, well, that's great. She actually added golf in there too. I said, that's great, except all those sports are fall sports here in Pennsylvania. You got to pick one. And she ran cross country for 4 years at Villa, and track and field and indoor track and field for 3 years. And was part of 2 state championship winning teams on the cross country team, and was able to be a contributor, and just had a great experience, and still holds her relationship with our current head coach, Therese Brown, as something that's very special, and they still connect, they still get together, and to me, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Really, that's great to hear. And what a different perspective that you as a dad got to see, internally in the school, but then as a father to Brendan and Catherine, to be able to see those experiences. That's pretty cool.
It was. I was just glad to be, I was a great passenger. I was along for the ride, and it was a wonderful thing to watch both of them experience it through a different lens, for sure.
And continuing on talking about like the idea of the student culture and the role that athletics can play in their lives. One of the things I wanted to talk about too was what role do you believe athletics plays in developing leadership, in developing character for students?
That's right in the wheelhouse, Jimmy. I mean, it really is. The number one thing, I really say this now, certainly more than I've ever said it at any time. Failure is a very, very good thing. I tell our students, and it's factual, I fail more in a week than they would fail in a month. Trust me when I say that. But going through experiencing failure, what is that, Jimmy? It's real life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what real life is. And as a baseball guy, you know this. If you fail 7 out of 10 times at the plate consistently, if you're talking T-ball to Little League to Legion to high school to college to professional, you fail 7 out of 10 times, where do you land, Jimmy?
Yep.
You land in the Hall of Fame.
You land in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, that's But that's life.
Yeah.
I really am a firm believer that part of athletics, everything is not going to go your way. The best athlete in the world, it didn't go. Michael Jordan got cut from his high school basketball team. He got cut as a freshman. That's a well-known story, and I think we know how it finished up. That, to me, is the biggest thing. Take the failure, take that experience of failure, use it as a motivator. It can be to get into a school, it can be to in a professional sense, or it could be to make another team. Failure is something that can and should fuel us all, and certainly we fail a ton here, and that's okay. Right. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. You look at, what an athletic season and how many ups and downs you can experience in that. You start off hot and then you go a little slow, and then you got to figure out how to turn it around, or any other ways that you can kind of compile as the season goes. And most recently, we just had Jeremy Lynch on as a guest, and we were talking about his first season and how they started off slow. I think
0-5 slow.
Yeah, 0-5 slow.
That's slow.
Won a few games, but then what Jeremy kind of said was we also kind of hit another lull. We lost a few games in the middle of the season too. And, he said what it taught that group just being important to realize, because now the end of the season was great, made it to the playoffs and had a good run there at the end of the year. I can only imagine the lesson those boys took, the ones that were, even the senior that was on the team, but sophomores, juniors, being young and understanding, it's not always about how you start, it's how you finish, and you got to be able to overcome these things.
For sure, and a lot of that was bad ADing, in that the schedule did not do a new head coach any favor, so I take full responsibility for not getting him to a better place as a launch point, first off. Secondly, I go back to one of my favorite lines in a movie, and it's not to make it an analogy of military to real life, but there's a movie called Black Hawk Down. It's a story of a real incident. Unfortunately, it was a tragic incident for our country in the mid-'90s. But to ramp it up, near the end of the movie, one of the squad leaders is talking to a private or a captain that is kind of lost after this situation, and said, they're in this battle. They get they go back to the base, and he says to me, "You're going back out there?" And he said, when I go home, people ask, "Why do you do this?" And the answer is, they'll never understand. It's about the guy next to you. I'm not making the military analogy.
Yeah.
But if you look at athletics, pick a sport, any sport, that's what it is. It's about the guy, it's about the girl, the male, the female next to you. How do we function as a team?
Right.
And that gets back to the failure piece, but you can have 9, 10, 25 all-stars. If you're not functioning as a unit, that's not going to work out for you. And I still think that that's a real-life premise that's going to help these young men, these young women in their next steps in life.
Right.
How are you functioning as a group? Because last I checked, no matter what you're doing eventually professionally, I'm pretty sure you're going to interact with another human being at some point.
Odds are in that favor.
It's pretty strong that you're going to be with someone else in some capacity. How do you work and function with them? And that, to me, is the biggest part of being in athletics, is you have to work off of other people.
Yeah. You
have to give, you have to take.
Yeah, and that's definitely some of the lessons that I know I've learned along the way, and it's some of the things that I've seen. I don't know, there's just a difference between when I interact with certain people who I know their backgrounds in athletics, and you can just tell they have that mentality too of, they understand the team components and working together as a unit. I really like that story you were sharing from Black Hawk Down,
yeah,
too.
I just think it's so important that however the person next to you, whether you're great friends or not, that you still need each other.
Yeah.
Right? You just do. Pick any kind of sport, and it could be something as simple as, and I don't say the sport is simple, but you think individual, okay, cross country or running, that's individual. Swimming, it's not. You're still being pushed by a teammate. in practice, in a competition. There are relays. There are displacements in events. It's all about the team. That's what it is.
That's cool. So this is a fun question for you now. You've been here obviously 25 years.
You've said that a few times here.
You know, I don't want anybody to forget while we're going through this conversation. A few more grays now than back then.
That's all I got.
So you've seen prep teams play on some of the biggest stages. I mean, in multiple different sports and a lot of exciting times and teams that have happened. Are there any personal favorites of yours and just ones that really stand out to you in terms of, prep sports history, so to speak?
You know, that's a really good question. I think the first one that stands out, not because it was the first, I suppose somewhat because it was the first, my first year here in 2000, we won our first ever state football championship. The reason I mention that is not because it was football. It's more because the opponent was Central Bucks West. They were on a 59-game winning streak. They had beat us in very difficult fashion for us the year before by a point. ESPN had done a documentary on them and their coach, Mike Pettin. And the game was featured on the front page of the sports section of USA Today.
Wow.
And it goes to overtime. I mean, you talk about the perfect Molotov cocktail, that was it. And just seeing the reaction and I think the relief. Mike Mishler had done just such a fabulous job to get the program turned around back in the late 90s and then to get the payoff there. That stands out just because of everything around it on the national setting. But, to me, Jimmy, it's never about the championships. I still, my biggest joy at any event is watching a kid probably overachieve or do something that they didn't expect to do, didn't think they could do, and watching the reaction of their coach and that student. That still moves me emotionally. I still love that. Whether you're finishing first or 101st, really to me doesn't matter. I still love seeing that because that's what athletics is about. It's about competition. It's about real life qualities, and I still get a huge charge out of that.
Yeah. A couple months back, for our listeners, and I'm sure you know, I had Ed Hinkle on the podcast. He's out in Iowa now, so we did it through a Teams meeting. But it was the first time I really got to talk with Ed, and obviously he's a legendary Ed Hinkle, right? I was just a kid when he was playing. But it was really cool to talk to him about that 2000 season and what it meant for him. Yeah,
and I will tell you, I don't go back nearly as long as so many others, though I'm getting closer. Ed Hinkle's the greatest football player I've ever seen in Erie, Pennsylvania. Literally a threat to score anytime he had the football in his hand, whether that be as a quarterback, a receiver, a defensive back, a kicker, a punt returner. He was surreal in terms of how talented he was. Just not enough words to describe what he was capable of doing, and was just a wonderful teammate and has been a fantastic coach in Iowa.
Yeah.
But I mean, if again you didn't ask, I said it. But since you brought up his name, that to me is the greatest player to ever play high school football. It didn't, whether it translated to the next level or not. I mean,
sure.
His last collegiate game, regular season, he had 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say, anything he did at Iowa or a tryout in the NFL. High school wise, I just don't think there was ever a better player.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, it's a big statement, but it's one I've heard from other people
it's
too.
It's one person's opinion.
Yeah.
And Mike Mishler may or may not. I probably could speak for him and say he wouldn't answer that. That's the right political answer, politically correct answer. But
that's
given
like
that you brought up his name, Ed was special.
That's like him comparing the 2000 state championship team to the 2016 or 2017 team.
Don't do that.
Yeah. He won't answer it. Yeah.
No.
They both have their pros, right?
For sure.
So kind of going along the lines of just kind of looking back, you've also been the director of the Cathedral Prep Athletic Hall of Fame. Is there any certain induction stories or moments that have stood out to you? Those are usually pretty cool ceremonies that you're a part of, kind of putting together. Anything that really has stood out to you over the years when you've put those together?
I think they all stand out in that you're just very happy to see people excited and joyous. The number one story I think that would stand out was in the early 2000s. The Tomczak brothers were inducted, and I think their speech ended about 14 minutes ago. Right? I mean, but it was great because they tag teamed this thing, and it was one story after another, and it was fantastic. They were all deserving of the accolade, but their stories just were top shelf, and they just kept going. And then someone else would come back up. No, you didn't tell that right. What about the time we did this? That stands out, and I think for a lot of people, if they looked at a list and saw those names, oh wow, I was at that. That was funny and it was good. That stands out. But when you see people emotional at times like that, to me it's very special to all of us, because again, they put in some capacity Cathedral Prep and now certainly Villa Maria Academy on the athletic map.
Right.
And to see them recognized as they should be and being able to share that experience with their loved ones, with their classmates, with their teammates, that's a special thing.
Yeah. And for our listeners too, Bill, you don't make these decisions alone. You have a committee that's kind of helping you with evaluating, taking in new names and looking at their credentials and being able to decide who makes this certain class of the Hall of Fame. So it's good to see, part of that process involves those conversations, because I'm always impressed with the fact, this person in cross country or this person in golf, and it's so many different backgrounds, but everyone has the stats to back up the reasons why they should be in. I mean, it's a tough job to narrow in on, but it's always cool to see the list. I'm sure those phone calls are pretty neat to make at those times.
They really are.
Yeah.
And we're very blessed to have great institutional knowledge within the prep and Villa communities to assist in that process. The biggest issue we have is that we just have way, way, way too many qualified candidates and not enough slots and really not enough time. We're playing catch up from decades ago.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have, but most certainly a problem.
Yeah. Transitioning now, this episode's coming out the Monday before the Burger King Classic, previously known as the McDonald's Classic. So obviously, big weekend coming up. You guys ready? Getting there?
Next question. Right?
Yeah.
It's that clock inside your head and just in general is it's constantly moving in the wrong direction for us. But it's a wonderful event. That was started by Ron Surtz and Bill Flaherty back in 1983, and Ron, who was the legendary athletic director here at Prep for so long, a Hall of Famer, an Erie icon, started the event really to kind of, again, in conjunction with the head coach at the time, Bill Flaherty, another Hall of Famer, to just kind of beef up Prep's basketball schedule. And it's been going for over 40 years now. Wow,
it's so cool. When you look at this and you become the AD, now you're taking over the reins for the tournament. What makes it stand out in your opinion? What's the aura around the Burger King Classic? Why do so many different people come to this tournament? And how has it kind of evolved ever since you kind of took it over too?
I think the reason it has worked is twofold. One, the fans in this area support good high school basketball, and it's a showpiece, so people get excited to watch schools from different parts of the country perform. And secondly, it's because our volunteers behind the scenes. That's why people or schools either hear about it and want to come back or spread the word. there's a lot of hand-holding when these schools get here, and that's just the dedication of the volunteers that we have that, to me, is the differentiator. We have honorary coaches and support staff behind the scenes that are with these schools from the moment they arrive in town until they leave Sunday morning after the event. That's what makes it work. That's why it flows. It's harder and harder to do because the dynamic, Jimmy, of, we'll just say, high-end high school basketball has completely changed. True high schools, true four-year high schools, they're not a dying breed at all. That's not the case at all. But the high-end piece of basketball is starting to leave those schools, turning into one-year factories, or you're going to kind of just different type of programs that are not basic high schools.
Sure.
That's made it more difficult. It has. But it also makes it more rewarding when you get programs in here that are still obviously of the ilk of the normal high school, and you feel not just vindicated, but you feel happy and excited to see them, and they're excited to be part of a true 4-team 2-game event. Yeah,
it was fun working at the event center and working in conjunction with your team on the Burger King Classic and the excitement around it. You get the Burger King banners all over the facility, and I don't know if the King's coming this year, but the Burger King would be there and getting the crowd all excited. So it's a fun tournament. It's a fun weekend. I enjoy bringing my boys to it, and they have fun watching it. And just that excitement around the facility is electric for sure.
We would expect to dust off the King, have him ready to go. We're very appreciative and thankful for Bill Patterson and Megan Tidwell at Burger King, for being the title sponsor for as long as they have, and still believing in the event. And we're just hopeful that people come out and attend. And we'd like to think we have 4 really good programs coming in, and excited to watch some high school basketball.
Yeah, can you tell us a little about the programs? What teams are coming in?
Yeah, I mean, it's we every year is kind of a somewhat, you're doing as much research as you can, trying to figure out what's going to work and can you make things happen. This year we have 3 programs that have never been to the Classic, which is
that's cool.
Really interesting. We have Richmond Heights, that's from the Cleveland area. They're defending state champions. They're making their initial trip in. Aliquippa from outside of Pittsburgh, defending state champions. They've never been here. That's their initial trek to Erie for the Classic. And then Archbishop Wood, perennial powerhouse from Philadelphia. They've been in the last 4 Final Fours in 6A in the PIAA basketball tournament. Just a great program, and we're excited to have all 3 into town.
Yeah. What team does Prep open up with? Did you decide that yet?
Yeah, it'll be Aliquippa on the first night on Friday. That'll take place at 7:30 at the Haggerty Family Event Center, and then Richmond Heights and Archbishop Wood tip off at 6 in the opener, and then Saturday is the consolation and championship game again at 6 and 7:30.
If people want to get tickets, where can they get those at?
Yeah, that's a good question and a good point. We have them available at the school, which includes reserve tickets, and then all the local Burger King outlets has tickets as well. And we're looking forward to a big weekend, and hope people come out and support it.
Yeah, and you can get them at the door until they sell out, right?
That's correct. Yeah, they'll be on sale Friday and Saturday, 1 hour before tip-off of the first game.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to coming, as I mentioned.
We'll have a spot for you.
Good. I'm just happy to not be working it this year again.
Well, I wish we could both say that, but that's not the case. So.
Well, Don Campbell, who works in our spirit store, was reminding me yesterday about, I think it was the first Classic I was the manager of the facility for. Power went out. Do you remember that one?
I think I might remember that. Yeah.
Not the best, but it didn't stop us from playing the game with the flipboards and being able to keep...
That was an education. Yeah, we played with basically like mood lighting. We had emergency lighting in the building, and then right as the first game, the consolation game ended, because there was a power grid out in downtown Erie from, I think, about 11 a.m. until right around 8 o'clock.
Yep.
Right when the horn went off I think we had an air horn, actually, because we had no power. Right when that game concluded, the lights popped on, and felt like you hit the lottery at that point.
Sure did.
Because we didn't have the bleachers out. People were standing around.
That's right.
So then we had to move the bleachers. Thanks for that PTSD that you just
Oh, man, I tell you what, it sticks with me because I was like, first year as a manager of the facility, you want to make sure everything goes right, but some things are out of your control, and you just make the best you can out of a bad situation.
You forgot to put the switch on to on.
Oh,
that's what it was.
That's what it was.
All that pain and suffering could have been avoided.
Oh, that's funny. All right, well, just a couple more questions for you if you got a couple minutes.
Bring it.
So, for all the alumni listening, between Prep and Villa, what do you hope they're taking away from hearing about the athletic program success and some of the future goals that you have for the institution?
That would be up to them. I think, Jimmy, the number one thing, I'll deviate off of athletics for a brief moment. I think, especially the alums that are living out of town and haven't had a chance to come back, this merger for our current students has been wonderful. They love it. I tell this story often. I'll leave a name out of it. The first, a couple years ago, we were delayed in opening the start of the school year because the building was behind a bit. It was behind about 10 days in terms of the start of our school year. So we pushed it back, and Mike Mishler is in charge of all the facilities and was heading that up, had just done great work to get us. I mean, we probably had no business opening when we did.
Yeah.
But he just kept steaming ahead to get it done with our president, Kevin Smith. And thankfully, again, we started about 10 days late. I'm walking on the football field before the game, well before the game. And, the special teams guys are always out about an hour before the rest of the teams come out. And, I just happened to walk by and say, hey, good luck tonight, boys. Have fun. And I kept walking, and one of the kids who was a senior, whose sister had graduated a few years earlier from Villa, yelled to me as I'm walking with my back to him. He said, hey. And I turned around, and he looked at me and said, why didn't we do this years ago? And I thought, boy, for a current senior who had gone to school with all boys for 3 years, for him to have that reaction unprompted tells me all I need to know about school. And again, there are always road bumps and situations that arise. I don't know that it could have gone any better in terms of just the meshing of the two. And I think that's the number one thing that I want people to get out of it, that, hey, come back, visit the school. You won't recognize it. It's completely different and transformed. And in November, we had alums back, for a reception. I yearly have a young alumni reception, and they were blown away by that. But that cosmic combination of students feeling as one, to me, that's the one thing I want people to get out of that. I think it's translated into athletics, and that we have our swim teams practice together in a state-of-the-art facility. But to me, it's mainly just the overall vision of how we've connected as a school.
Yeah. And every year, or I should say, last year was the first year we hosted the reunion year, the reunion picnic here at the school at Prep. This coming summer in July, we'll be hosting. We do it for every 5 years. So if your class ends with a 5 or a 0, we'll be hosting your reunion this year, and it will be at the Cathedral Prep school again, which is your chance that if you haven't been back to the school to see it, that's a great opportunity to do so. Reach out to any one of us in the advancement team, or I'm sure Bill would be happy to even walk you around the building. I'm volunteering him on that now.
No, absolutely.
But it is neat to see. There's so many spots in the building that, it's a flashback. You remember what you're eating for lunch the same day you were looking at this spot, because, it looks exactly the same. Then there's other spots we've repurposed, so it looks the same, but it's a different function now. And there's other spots it's just completely brand new, and you wouldn't even recognize where you are in the building. It's a pretty cool way that everything was brought together, and it's a great point that you're making here. The message to the alums is that the school's going well. Things are in good hands.
Well, I think you would agree the number one reaction that I've received is, why the heck didn't we have this?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
How did we
all
lose
the
out
time.
on this opportunity?
All the alumni that come through tell me they're jealous that the
For
kids
sure.
get what they get here. It feels like when people were first seeing the event center. And people first saw the event center, which is funny. We've been talking about athletics. We even talked about the event center at all. But anyway, I remember being at the event center, and alums would come for the first time and say, what if we had a strength and training room like that when we were here?
Yep.
What if we had this field when we were here? And now it's the same type of statements here with the current school building.
No question. Just a huge blessing, and we're glad the current day students are getting what the opportunities they're receiving, for sure.
Yep. All right, last question for you. Not athletics focused, but kind of a personal one for you. So if you, Bill, could go back in time, all right, and speak to yourself when you were a student at Prep, what advice would you give yourself?
I think the first bit of advice that I would need to give back to myself, because I didn't do nearly as good of a job with it, was to take full advantage of the opportunities. And I think that's what I try to speak to, again, when students start here, and certainly every day. Take advantage of what you have, and I most certainly did not do nearly enough of that. I'm glad the way things turned out, but they certainly could have been, experiences could have been better, easier, changed on my own, probably professional end, if I had taken better advantage of the resources that I knew were here, that I was just too lazy to do.
Yeah.
And I think, when you're focused on one thing, again, I said it earlier, you box out the rest of it, and that was a clear mistake on my part. But I think we're given so many opportunities here, the students currently, and I think the vast majority, Jimmy, take advantage of them. That would be the one thing. The just something, again, on an academic end, the Gannon dual enrollment, we have such a great relationship with Gannon University. For our students right now to be able to pocket, I was talking to one of our alums who's a freshman college basketball player right now, and just talking about how all of her credits had transferred in. It's amazing when you start to do that math, and my kids were blessed enough to have that experience as well. It's just about taking advantage of what's here. And again, I think the vast majority do that. That's what I would tell myself, and I'd kick myself sideways to make sure I did a better job of it.
Yeah.
But you live and learn. Life is not a straight line. It's never easy. We're promised nothing. And when yesterday's gone, you try to move on and be better for it. And I think that's one thing that we all get out of Cathedral Prep, is that we have that opportunity, and we're blessed to have it.
And it's great you're in a position you're in now where you get to share that with the kids, right? To be able to be involved, all the things you were talking about. You would kind of give yourself, you have that opportunity where you pass it on to those current students, which is great.
You don't want to try to beat it into their head because they don't want to hear too much of it, because I'm an old person. But you maybe give them a smidgen of it, and they'll turn out better than I have, that's for sure. And yeah, it's just still a blessing to be here, and look forward to coming to work every day.
How many years?
It's been a couple.
It's been a couple.
A few.
A couple great years, Bill, under your leadership here. We
that.
appreciate what you're doing for the school, and it was fun having this conversation with you for the podcast. Long time coming. I have had you on my list, and it was great that we could finally schedule this up.
Just make sure you have that edit button at the ready, Jimmy, and slice and dice this thing as you want to. But I really appreciated the conversation. It was good. Good to go back in time, and yeah, it's been a privilege to have been here and to have these experiences at Cathedral Prep, and obviously great talking with you today.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you.